influence on gambling behavior for certain reasons. Now, other parts of this research that I'm not reporting on at the moment, but have been published in the report that's been delivered and is now published on the Gambling Research Australia website, actually did show that, jackpot-oriented machines, people in general tend to spend more money on those machines. So machines that have higher value jackpots or more jackpot prizes displayed on the machine, people tend to spend more money on those machines than they do on other machines. Moreover, at-risk players, people with some pre-existing gambling problems, preferentially select machines with higher jackpot amounts or more jackpots displayed. So there's two sources of indication that jackpots may be encouraging people to gamble more. So I guess the question is what to do about that, and this is research is really reporting on one idea about how to deal with that situation. I'll go back to the title. The title is Jackpot Expiry. There was a comment earlier on looking at this presentation. Somebody remarked that Jackpot Expiry, I don't know what that is, and that's because I've made it up. And so making up terms is always a good way to get yourself famous, I imagine. And making up words is you know, a perfectly cromulent thing to do. It's a joke. Cromulent isn't a word either. So we'll talk about what Jackpot Expiry is in just a second. But first I wanted to talk about what Jackpot Expiry really requires an identifying technology. Okay, so it was first thought of in the sort of rubric of pre-commitment. Now, most of you will know what pre-commitment is, but pre-commitment technologies are technologies where you have an identifying technology, usually a card that you insert into the machine, and you identify gambling limits that you want to set either by the day or by the week. And if you spend more than you initially pre-committed to, then you're locked out of the machines. But really, this idea can use any identifying technology, including loyalty cards that are common, at least in Australia, for pubs and clubs. And so, and in fact, if you want a large win, you have to be a member of the club and you have to have a card. You might not insert it into the machine, but if you win big, they're going to want to see your card before they pay out that amount. So this is very common technology. It doesn't require any change necessarily in the technology that already exists. What is pre-commitment? Again, pre-commitment is that idea of pre-committing to limiting losses, but you have a card to do that, and again, you have to identify yourself to get that card, just like you have to in the venue. Pre-commitment talks about hard limits to your gambling. So you nominate a maximum amount of losses that you want, maybe within a day. If you reach that loss limit, then you're locked out of the machines. That's a way of pre-committing. You make the decision, but the machines lock you out. I want to also talk about, though, the idea of soft limits, and that's where Jackpot Expiry comes in as another soft limit. Soft limits impose a decision points where people can decide whether they want to continue gambling or not. You know, based on that. And one simple example is pop-up warning messages. You can have a pop-up warning message that says that you've lost this amount. Click to continue. You can continue gambling, but it's telling you, hey, this is how much you've lost, or this is how much time you spent on the machine. It becomes a decision point, a soft limit where people can decide whether or not they want to continue. Jackpot Expiry is another idea for a soft limit, and it's where the potential for a jackpot win is suspended. So after a certain number of plays, or a certain period of time playing. So you go in with your identifying technology, you've been playing for 2 hours, let's say, and then a pop-up message comes on and says, you can continue playing, but you're no longer eligible to win any jackpot prizes. So it's a soft limit. People can decide for themselves whether they want to continue playing, but it's not the jackpot hanging out there that's going to keep them playing, because in fact they can't win the jackpot anymore. The reason why this might be effective is it might be particularly good for people with pre-existing gambling problems because they might see the jackpot as a way to come even. They've lost a lot of money, they've been playing for a while, they think, well, yeah, I know this is irrational, I shouldn't be doing this, but if I just win that jackpot, I'll just win all the money back and some more, and I'll be good. This is a way of removing that and making an appropriate decision point to say, well, yeah, maybe I should stop gambling now, but then again allowing them the freedom to make their own choice, and that's what Jackpot Expiry is all about. So we used a simulated poker machine on a laptop computer to run the study. It's a very simplified version, as you can see, a 3-line with one line win on the machine, but that's that's all that's really necessary for this purpose. Players were recruited through newspaper advertisements in Noosa, Queensland, beautiful Noosa, and given $20 cash when they came into the experiment as compensation for their time coming in to do this study. We had them fill out a couple of preliminary demographic questionnaires, and then we asked them, would you like to gamble with this $20? And because they came to be part of a gambling study, they always say yes. And then we said, well, then I'll just take that $20 from you, and I'll put it as credit on the machine. Now this creates the correct perception that they're gambling with their own money. And we think that that's important because they've had time to hold that money, maybe even put it in their purse or in their pocket, and hold on to it for a while. They now own that money, and they literally own it because they can walk away with it, and we've had past experiments where people have done that. But in this one, they all decided to gamble with their money, and then we added as 2,000 1-cent credits on the machine. Okay, here's a little fun animation. That's as good as it gets as far as animations go. I used to do things that are really fancy, but time has become precious. So we had 107 subjects who were recruited through these newspaper advertisements. They tend to be people who have experience with poker machine gambling already. Those are the sort of people that are interested in these sorts of studies, which is good for us. As you can see, there were a mix of people with no gambling problems, the slight majority with no gambling problems, and then a minority with some gambling problems, but a higher than population rate of people with a high level of gambling problems as well. So by random assignment, we assign them to 3 different conditions in playing this machine. One was the relevant pop-up message happening right after the 20th trial, which is to say that you're no longer eligible to win the jackpot prize. So it pops up on the screen and says you're no longer eligible to win. We also had 2 control conditions. The first one is an irrelevant control condition, and that's where you also get a pop-up, but all it says is click to continue, and you say okay. And then we also had a control condition where no pop-up came at all. Why the 2 controls? Well, it may be just the interruption in play can have an effect on behavior, and so the irrelevant message was put in there for that purpose to see if that was a relevant way of changing people's behavior. Now, the poker machine paradigm in this sense is everybody got the same sequence of wins and losses. That is, there are a series of, I believe, 5 wins, if I remember, within the first 20 trials, spread throughout, always in the same sequence for every participant. So it's represented to be a random machine, but is in fact not. It's rigged. And then on the 20th trial, there's an infinite series of losses, so it always loses thereafter. And one of the things that you like to measure in these sort of things is how long people continue to gamble after they start losing, as is the typical. So there's a little winning phase followed by an indefinite losing phase. So it's much like real-world gambling, isn't it? And of course, some of the other measures that we like to measure typically in these are behavioral measures of bet size, whether they choose larger or smaller bets, and their speed of betting. So even though most people can bet very quickly after the end of a roll, or they can take their time and bet a little bit slower, that's another indication of gambling intensity. The faster you bet over any particular period of time, the more money you're likely to lose, because of course the house has the edge. Have to remember not to click that. So assignments to subjects to condition. This is a little bit complicated, but it's just showing that an important feature additional feature to the relevant, irrelevant, and control messages is that we also had 2 different jackpot prizes. And the 2 different jackpot prizes were to make it more real to them, and it was real because there was a jackpot prize. To make it more real to them, we showed them the jackpot in a glass mason jar. And there were 2 different kinds of jackpot prizes. One was a cash jackpot. It was $500 shown in a jar. Hey, look, you can win this. And then we also had a $25,000 prize that we showed them in a jar. Now you're asking, how did you do that? Good question. And this is where a bit of cleverness comes in, or at least I think it's clever. What we did is we bought 500 $1 lottery tickets for a maximum prize of $25,000. So these were lottery tickets, or scratch tickets rather, instant scratch tickets that could win a potential $25,000 prize. And so we told them that, we showed them that, yes, here are these tickets that you can have. So of course, they would potentially win the tickets and potentially win up to $25,000. So in a sense, it was a real or a seemingly real offer of the chance for a $25,000 jackpot prize. And so people were randomly assigned to condition. One little a caveat of that, it's a technicality, but some of you may appreciate it. Random assignment doesn't really work all that well, believe it or not, for 100 subjects and 3 different conditions. You can actually get quite a bit of variation between them. So what we did is stratified random assignment, where we made sure that we had relatively equal gender distribution in all of those 3 categories, age distribution, as well as gambling problems as measured by the LIBET scale. So we made sure that there were relatively equal number of people with gambling problems in all of the different conditions. The LIBET was only used for that purpose, not for control, for later control of in the statistics. We used the PGSI, which was given only after the end of the poker machine experiment. So here's some of the results. One of the outcomes that I wanted to talk about was speed of betting. Again, over any fixed period of time, the faster you bet, the more you're going to lose when the house odds are against you. As you can see, in the relevant condition, this is bets per minute. So the higher the number, obviously the faster you're betting. And in the relevant condition where we said your jackpot is expired, their betting slowed significantly. So it does seem to have a moderating influence on their betting speed, and that's significantly different from both the irrelevant and the control condition. Losses past the 20th trial. Again, the message came up on the 20th trial, so all that's really relevant is what happened after the 20th trial. Here's how much money people lost at the end of the study. As you can see, in the relevant condition, particularly when they're shown the cash, the jar full of cash, that seemed to be the one that really that people really saw as real. In the relevant condition, where they say your jackpot is expired, they ended up walking away with more of their money. They were more able to see that as something that they could give up. And the irrelevant and control were a bit higher. Now the other question, I just wanted to mention one thing. The reason why the losses past the 20th trial were more moderate in the relevant condition is probably a combination of factors of both lower bet sizes and quitting early. So we couldn't distinguish between the 2 of them what were happening, but it seemed to be a combination of both that were leading to lower losses, because those are actually the only 2 variables that could lead to lower losses. Neither of them by themselves proved significant, but lower losses themselves proved significant. So it's a combination of both that's producing that result. Lastly, I wanted to talk about enjoyment. one of the really important things in trying to develop ideas to keep the machines or make the machines more safe is to make them still enjoyable for people who are recreational gamblers. Why is that important? Well, it's easy to make a poker machine unattractive. You know, you could cover it in baby vomit. Nobody would want to play it. You know, you could make it smell. You know, you could make it unattractive in a myriad of ways. But of course, that's not realistic. That doesn't really help the situation. You have to have a result that will keep the enjoyment level for recreational gamblers there. Otherwise, it won't be accepted by industry, and it's really just a non-starter. So this is an attempt to show whether there's a difference in enjoyment between the different levels. You can see this is some subjective enjoyment you know, rated on a scale of how much they enjoyed the experience of playing this machine. And you can see that there is no great difference and no significant difference between any of the conditions. So even the jackpot expiring, that didn't seem to make their experience less enjoyable, even though that message flashed up on the screen, which is important. We also did arousal. I don't have a GSR arousal, which is a little finger thing that you stick on their fingers to see if there's any difference in subjective arousal that they have, and there were no differences in subjective arousal either. Okay, so here's the conclusions. Gambling speed is reduced by jackpot expiry. Again, that's a behavioral indicator of gambling intensity and will tend to reduce losses over the long term. Losses themselves reduce with jackpot expiry in the cash condition. So when we showed them the cash as the potential jackpot, their losses were reduced. They were able to give that up, or they had to give that up, of course, and the jackpot expiry seemed to be effective there. So pre-commitment or loyalty cards, which could be attached to any identifying technology that allows you to know, attach the gambler to the jackpot prize, can provide a sort of soft break on gambling without impacting on enjoyment. I see it, these sort of solutions, these sort of technologies is very similar to what's happening in automobile safety at the moment. So automobile safety, you know, up until the sort of current era, has relied on these passive systems, seatbelts and airbags. When you get in an accident, they protect you, and they're quite effective in doing that. Automobile safety has really moved on, as you probably know, where now they have a lot of active systems that prevent you from getting into an accident in the first place. So electronic stability control is an example of that. It makes sure that the car doesn't get out of control. And there are also active braking systems now from companies like Volvo and Mercedes, where they'll brake if the Volkswagen has them as well. Well, they'll brake if the person doesn't brake themselves. And so this jackpot expiry idea is very much like that. It's an active system that helps protect people before they develop gambling problems by giving them soft limits and allowing them to control their expenditure. Thank you.